I was a university student when I fell in love with Daria. She was the little sister of my best friend, so I considered her off limits, but my crush on her persisted and grew. She's one of those beautiful, brilliant people who is alive and breathing to make the world a better place. How could I not be drawn to that? One day, she told me she had feelings for me. And to my relief, my best friend didn't have a problem with me dating his sister either. So for 2 wonderful years, Daria was my girlfriend. I should have asked her to marry me. I don't know why I didn't. I suppose I thought I had all the time in the world. We were young, and there was no need to rush things. We lived in a country that isn't exactly democratic, and we were political activists. I ended up getting arrested and going to prison for 9 years. Please don't think I'm some kind of monster for this. I don't want to go into detail in case it makes me identifiable somehow, but we didn't hurt anyone or do anything immoral. What we did is not even illegal in the country where I currently live, and our beliefs were far from extremist. I haven't seen or spoken to Daria since the day I got arrested. My best friend died shortly after, and Daria left the country, partly due to the possibility that she'd be arrested too. There wasn't any way for her to contact me while I was in prison, though apparently she contacted my dad a few times in the beginning. Things got even worse in our country while I was incarcerated, so my dad and I emigrated when I was released. We've been living in Western Europe ever since, and life is pretty okay. I live with my dad, and I have a steady, if shitty, job. Months ago, I found Daria online. She lives in a neighboring country, 7 hours away by rail. She doesn't use social media too much, but from what I've seen, there's no evidence of a partner or kids. And even if she's married, I'd be content just to be her friend, as I was for the first years we knew each other. Part of me desperately wants to reach out to her, and my dad has been encouraging me to do so, but I feel like it'd be too selfish. The circumstances of her brother's death were very traumatic for her, and I'm afraid that I'm just a living reminder of all the bad things that happened to us. And if she does have a partner, would my contacting her offend him and trouble their relationship? I don't want to cause her any more sadness. Time stood still for me while I was in prison, but I know it didn't for her or anyone else. She's done so well for herself. She's built a whole life, and I don't want to derail that life just because I feel entitled to a place in it. She might not even remember me at all. And even if she did invite me back into her life, I'd be nothing but a burden now, owing to my wrecked mental health. We've been apart twice as long as I knew her. Have I even the right to miss her as much as I do? For now, I've contented myself with Googling her name every so often and seeing that she's okay. It just hurts a lot, and I don't know how to make it not hurt. I still love her with everything I have. I probably always will. Should I reach out to her or leave her alone? If I do contact her, what should I even say? Now for the update. The short version is that I was wondering whether I should try to contact my former girlfriend after I went to prison for a long time. The consensus was that I should, and people gave very good advice on how to do that. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before, except my dad and people whose job it is to help me, lawyers, therapists, etc. And I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, "I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too." I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all, so I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying. At first, she called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used to. But then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too, but happy also. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe, and this was more true than I could have guessed. Because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison, she was afraid that they would decide to quietly unalive me rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation. After my sentencing, I was not allowed to receive correspondence or to have a commissary account at all because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more lighthearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously, I said yes and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it, but unfortunately, the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me, but she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since, and talking on the phone after I finish work at night until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24, and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is what's for dinner. Other times, it seems like we're trying to will dead versions of ourselves back to life in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed, and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness, or her warmth, or her empathy. She still cares about me, and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I want to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed, but I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up, and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people. I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I am extremely grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times, thank you. Now for the 2-month update. I've had a lot of people ask for an update, so here it is. The last 2 months have gone by very fast. I told Daria that I was nervous about the video call, and she insisted on having it right away so that I could get it over with and stop worrying. Seeing her made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. She still looks like herself, or even more beautiful, different, only in the sense that she is fully an adult now. The place she lives is very different from our home country, with a distinct culture to which she has assimilated. that she had time to adapt and feel completely at home in this place broke the illusion that no time had passed. In hindsight, that was probably the real reason I had been so nervous, because I could no longer occasionally forget myself and pretend that nothing had changed. The hardest part was not being able to reach through the screen and put my arms around her. Sitting there and watching someone you love cry from a distance is not easy. I barely noticed that I was crying too. She didn't seem surprised at my appearance, but she did eventually look me over and ask if the food was shoot where I lived. I explained about my jaw and that I'm getting it fixed. Less dental work is required than I thought, but I need a surgery. Her response was to ask for my address and order groceries to be delivered, including a lot of soft snacks that are easy to eat and these meal substitution drinks that are actually tasty. She sent them every week since, even though I tell her it's not necessary. When I wanted to pay her back, she laughed at me and said she owed me a lot of food because I had kept her from starving to death in university. I loved being able to cook for her, and I suppose it makes her just as happy to feed me now. We talk every day and have made video calls a regular habit. It does me so much good just to see her face, and the awkwardness is mostly gone now. It's easy to talk to her. Last night, she brought her computer into the kitchen and talked to me while doing the washing up. It's amazing how mundane things like that can make me feel normal and at home in ways I forgot I could. I never thought I'd be that stupidly happy to see someone washing coffee cups. I'm beginning to think that the idea of home as a physical place is a misconception. She likes to send photos to show me where she lives, what her life is like now. She was curious about how things are the same or different here. I didn't want to admit that I don't have much of a life to share back. Going places just didn't seem worth the effort. She is, though. At first, it was very small things. She would send a picture of a pastry she'd bought at a cafe, saying that she thinks her city has better pastries than mine. I would go out and get one so I could send her a photo too. Then it was beer, which city has better parks, interesting architecture, a department store, and so on. I figured out quickly that she was trying to coax me into going out more, but I played along to make her happy. I've seen more of my city in the past month than the entire time I've lived here before. I've been to the art museum and finally joined my colleagues for a beer. Usually, I go places for short durations at the less crowded times, but I'm still going, which is something. Daria used to be very sociable, so I thought that whatever happened, at least she wouldn't be lonely. I was wrong. There is a lot she could never tell her friends because they can't relate. They would feel sorry for her and cease to be equals, she says. Our experiences are different, but we are more able to understand each other than other people could. And despite her own burden, she has quietly picked up half the weight from my shoulders without ever being asked to. I am in awe of her, simply for being the kind of person who would. For Women's Day, I sent her some orchids, and she was very happy that I remembered her favorite flower. The things I can do to make her smile are so small, and she deserves so much more than I know how to give her. But I would do anything for this woman, and I am learning. There are protests happening where she is, with riot police and tear gas. Whenever this happens, she feels nervous and has difficulty sleeping. Now, at least, I can stay on the phone with her at night so she's not alone. Aside from the anxiety, there is also a sense of nostalgia. She talks about when that was us, making noise in the street. I'm glad she has good memories too, and doesn't have to be alone with them anymore. Finally, the reason I am updating now, she is coming to visit. We were talking last night and I mentioned that a church near me has special windows designed by an artist she loves, and I was thinking about going to see them eventually. She said it would be unfair of me to go without her, so I invited her to come with me. And then somehow it turned from vague future plans to being scheduled for next Saturday. She was going to come for the day, but I told her it was silly to travel so far to stay for such a short time, and suggested she stay the entire weekend. So she will be here from Friday until Sunday. I haven't really had time to be nervous yet, but I'm sure I will. Thank you again to everyone who has given advice or encouragement. It is very much appreciated. Am I the idiot for telling a nosy coworker to mind his own business after he dug into my past? I started a new position recently and was promoted quickly to a management position. Great. I have a long supervisory background, looking forward to helping in a wider capacity. One of my direct reports is a very conscientious and ambitious young man named Scott, who I have found pleasant to work with. Last week, during a normal conversation about a project, Scott brought up that he had done a background search on me and then asked me about an arrest on my record, an insurance snafu that led to a driver's license snafu. And when I was pulled over for a normal traffic stop in a rather conservative county, I spent a night in lockup, which was both humiliating and illuminating. This is not immediately Googleable. I gave it a try myself after he brought it up, and some of the specificity of the details he used leads me to believe he went to one of the publicly available background report sites and paid the nominal fee to obtain a detailed report. His question was framed as that he had been doing some research and wanted to clarify what happened in X state, because it wasn't clear if the arrest was in X or Y state. I lived in Y state more recently, but there's nothing easily found that links the two without paying for it. In the moment, I answered truthfully that these items were from more than a decade ago and were the result of a particular set of circumstances. I then excused myself from the conversation and returned to my office. The longer I think about it, the more weirded out I am. Scott would like to advance, and I feel like a follow-up conversation is definitely warranted. But I'm struggling with an approach aside from, hey, you super violated a boundary for me, and that will go over like a ton of bricks if you do it with future managers. To be fair, this is an overtly aggressive office culture, and asking to explain your professional background in a fair amount of detail to coworkers/employees is par for the course. But while I understand having a background check run by the company during the hiring process, I'd like to keep my personal background personal. And while I'm not wild about discussing this embarrassing incident, my reaction was more of a how and why did you obtain this information than a deep, dark secret that I'm worried might come to light. How do I let go of my weirded out feeling, and how do I best address this in a follow-up conversation? Now for the 5-year update. Imagine my surprise when I opened the blog today to find you had re-released my letter. I felt an update was owed to the commentariat. I can't tell you how much I appreciated your advice on this peculiar situation. It was a much-needed grounding and reminder of what normal should look like. While I was not able to participate when the post was originally published, I did read every single comment. Your point about questionable judgment was spot on. Scott was indeed a younger employee and deeply convinced of the superiority of his own intellect and gender. He had a 5, 10, and 15-year life plan with ambitious goals. Unfortunately, this was coupled with no more sense than God gave a goose. His previous work experience in an unrelated field left him the impression that it was absolutely reasonable to deeply examine the people around him, but then verify his findings through research. As part of his 5-year plan, he was applying for many roles within the company in search of advancement, despite not having relevant experience nor demonstrating development in any key skill areas. As mentioned in my letter, I was hired on in a line-level position and then promoted to a management position within a couple of months. In that industry, career advancement is often tied to reassignment in diverse geographic locations, going where the work is, and arriving at a new location is accompanied by sharing bona fides with the team to build connections. Imagine you've worked for 20 years for the same company, but have moved 8 times and never worked in the same place with the same team more than 2 years in a row. I had spent a great deal of time grabbing opportunities as they arose, living out of suitcases and working far, far too much. I had garnered some nice accolades in some faintly glamorous locales, but anyone who has done it knows that the luster is surface level only. Scott was intensely interested in my career experience and how I progressed in the field. Coupled with his desire for promotion and deeply flawed perceptions around reasonable follow-up, this led to the rather extraordinary situation I wrote in about. Armed with the knowledge that Scott was about as intuitive as a pile of bricks, I was planning a follow-up conversation the next time we worked together. He beat me to the punch when he asked me again about the information he had found as soon as I approached his desk. This time, with a copy of my booking photo pulled up on his screen, I reacted much more decisively this time, telling him to close the browsing window immediately and pulling him into the office for a one-on-one conversation. Looking back, I think I used your phrasing almost verbatim around work boundaries and everyone deserving privacy. Scott was mostly confused by this response. In his view, it was perfectly reasonable to look for deeper information about almost anyone. His rationale behind asking me about what he'd found was he wanted to alert me this information was out there. I told him it was unacceptable behavior and demonstrated incredibly poor judgment that he'd dig this far into any colleague, much less his manager. Then to bring it up multiple times. The company completed background checks for every employee. If they had proceeded with the hire, one would assume that nothing relevant was in the report. I also let him know this was such an egregious situation. We would be documenting both conversations and issuing a write-up, and this endangered his future with the company. After distance from the situation, I genuinely believe Scott was an incredibly intelligent person, demonstrating that anyone can be an absolute idiot. Did I document the situation in detail? Absolutely. Did I discuss this with HR and my boss? Absolutely. And she was ready to fire Scott. HR was flabbergasted and incredibly helpful in their handling of the situation. My documentation plan was supported with the agreement that Scott was on his final chance. Did Scott get promoted into another position? Not while I was there. After this incident, he did demonstrate an earnest desire to improve as a team member and make amends. We parted on decent terms. I actually wound up suggesting he read AAM regularly. Unfortunately, my industry was one devastated by the pandemic. I wrote the letter in ID 2019 mail. By March of 2020, almost my entire professional network was either unemployed or being overworked as skeleton staff. Driven by necessity, I grabbed a copy of Allison's book, and after giving some serious consideration about what I'd like out of my work moving forward, I retooled my resume and got to hunting. I've successfully transitioned to a new, very different industry and landed a position with a great company. It offers a much better work-life balance and more reasonable employee culture. While I do sometimes miss my old career, my situation is much improved, and I have been quite happy to be settled down. I have no idea where Scott has landed, but I wish him well. I will not be Googling him. Am I the idiot for accusing my boyfriend of stealing my dead ex's locket and breaking up with him? My boyfriend stole my necklace and gifted it to his sister. I have been with my boyfriend, I'll call him Adam, for almost a year now. I met him through my master's degree in the UK. When I was a sophomore in college, I had a long-term boyfriend who I'll call Kyle, who took his own life. We were together for 3 years, and I would never wish the pain of losing someone like that on my worst enemy. When we started college, Kyle gifted me a locket with the word "most" engraved on the back of it. It was our thing. It meant he loved me most. Sappy, but it was ours. Since his passing, this has been my most valuable possession, and I do not go anywhere without it. It is my last piece of Kyle. After finishing my degree and struggling the entire time, I decided that I needed to get out of the town where everything happened and decided to study my master's degree in the UK, which is where I met Adam. He is the first person I have allowed myself to love since losing Kyle, and I really have loved our relationship up until this. If it is true, I will never be able to forgive him. Adam has always been insecure about Kyle, asking hypothetical questions like if Kyle was still alive, would I be with him, and what I prefer about him over Kyle, etc. I usually dodge the questions and never give him an answer, as I don't condone these types of questions and don't want to feed into it. We have also had to have several conversations regarding Adam talking badly about Kyle. He also dislikes if I post about Kyle on his birthday or death anniversary or have hard days. He sees this as that I don't love him and am still hung up on Kyle. No matter how many years pass and how much I love Adam, Kyle was my first, and his life was cut short. He was also my best friend. I will mourn his life forever, even if I have moved on romantically. He knows how much this necklace from Kyle means to me and how devastated I've been the last 2 weeks frantically searching our apartment for it. I took a shower one day and set the necklace in the same place I always do. When I came out of the shower, it was gone, and Adam swears he has no idea where it is, and it must have fallen somewhere and got lost. I have been beside myself, spent nights in tears over losing this. Adam has a sister, who we will call Jane. Jane recently celebrated her 21st birthday. I am in her Snapchat private story, where she posted the beautiful locket that her big brother got her for her special day. It was the same locket. I know it because it has the same engraving on the back. I don't know how Adam explained that one, but he must have somehow. Jane and I are not particularly close, and this isn't something I feel I can just confront her about casually. I also feel silly bringing it up to Adam in case it isn't the same locket, and I am just going insane and looking for excuses because I was careless and lost it. I don't see where else Adam would have got this locket, as it was made for me by a small business back in the States. She was local to Kyle and me, and her work has always been my favorite. Advice on how to ask Adam about this? I know if I do, he'll deny it either way, and this locket means the world to me. I need it back. Thanks. Now for a few important comments. When advised to reach out to Adam's sister and break up with Adam, I said, I don't intend to stay with my boyfriend. I just need to figure out a way to make sure I get the necklace back. On needing to end the relationship and move my things out, I said, the relationship will definitely be done. It is just tricky. We share an apartment. His name is on the lease as he is from the UK and I'm American, working out the best way around it so I don't become homeless and trying to scrape together enough for a trip home for a while. A commenter asked about my thoughts on his red flag behaviors being jealous of a person who died prematurely. I replied, I have noticed there are red flags. I guess I have just excused them as Adam is the first person I've found myself having those feelings for again. Also, we share an apartment. He is the name on the lease because he is from the UK and I'm from the States. I'm also a student, trying to scrape together enough money to go back home for a while. I know it's a stupid reason to stay in a disrespectful relationship, but this is a foreign country and I'm mostly alone here. Another commenter suggested, if he denies it, tell him to produce the receipt or bank statement from the purchase. If he claims he paid cash, ask him what jewelry store or site he bought it from. Reach out to them to see if they've ever sold something like that. Then, when he can't prove he bought it, send photos of yourself wearing the locket to his sister and let her know that Adam stole it from you. If she knows about your late boyfriend, you can let her know it's the last piece you have of him and you need it back. Hopefully, she is a good person and returns it. He's competing with your late partner. Once you get your locket back, leave. Now for the 3-week update. Thanks, everyone, for all the advice. A day or two after the initial post, I confronted Adam about the locket. He claimed he did not know what I was talking about, and he couldn't believe I could be as cold as to accuse him of this. When asked for receipts or any proof that the locket was not the same as mine, he couldn't produce any and got angry and stormed out of our apartment. He came back that night, tried to gaslight me into believing I was the one who created a problem out of nothing. And even that the necklace he got his sister had no engraving whatsoever. Unlucky for him, I had contacted his mom while he was away, stating that I had misplaced my locket and was wondering if it had accidentally been taken home by Adam when he was visiting. She got back to me pretty quickly, saying that she had found my necklace on her daughter Jane's present pile, stacked away in a corner. She said that she would return the necklace to me as soon as possible, and that she or Jane must have mistaken it for one of her presents and put it back in the pile. She promised me that she would keep a hold of it in her room until she got the chance to return it. Immediately after I had confirmation that Adam's mom had the locket, I booked the cheapest flight home I could find and asked his mom for a lift to the airport. That way, she could return the necklace. She agreed, and after that, I sat planning exactly how I would tell Adam that we were breaking up. I didn't need him to admit to stealing the necklace. The fact that I had enough doubt in my mind that I knew he had taken it was enough for me to know that this relationship was going nowhere. I just wanted my necklace back. I stayed with Adam until my flight, which was about a week ago. I let him and his mom drive me to the airport. I left a note, breaking up with him, telling him that my friends would be by to pick up my stuff and move it between their flats. I took a leave of absence from uni until I work out where I'm going to stay when I get back to the UK, and have contacted my landlord about taking my name off the lease. When Adam's mom gave me back my necklace, his face was priceless. He looked like a deer in the headlights. He was so angry, but he couldn't show it in front of his mom. His sister Jane hasn't once questioned the missing necklace, and it's been around 2 weeks now. I doubt she will ever notice. She is rather spoiled. I'm glad to update that I'm safe. I'm back home with my necklace from Kyle. I'm just home from visiting with his grave, telling him this entire story and laughing about it. It reminded me that I should update and probably hold higher standards in men for myself. Thanks for your love and support. Now for a top comment. Commenter 1 said, "Wow, what a roller coaster. It sounds like you handled that situation with some serious finesse. Confronting him, getting the necklace back, and breaking free, all while keeping your dignity intact? That's impressive. I can just picture Adam's face when his mom handed back your necklace. Talk about a plot twist. It's like he thought he was playing chess, but you were playing 4D checkers. I'm so glad you're back home, and it's awesome that you took the time to visit Kyle's grave and share a laugh about it. Here's to higher standards and better men in your future."